morning, everyone. I'm here to discuss with you how to make corporate innovation work, because as technologies develop, your organizations need to change and your own departments need to change. And technology is opening up new possibilities. You've already heard about the large language models, maybe no-code, low-code solutions, enabling you to find and access data in a completely new way. Technology also puts new challenges on your plates, probably. Carbon reporting, dealing with new ways of fraud and cyber attacks. And technology enables all of this and also helps you to address all of these. So there's a positive side of it and there's a negative side to it. And as technology develops at lightning speed, it's very likely that your organization does not. Unfortunately, but you have to try to keep up. Reality is technology does not determine the speed of change. It's very likely that most of your organizations just use a fraction of what's possible today. So why is this? Well, there are three key limiting factors slowing innovation down in existing organizations. And the larger and more traditional the organization is, the stronger these internal forces are. The first one has to do with organizational silos. What do? We split organizations up in business units, product lines, staff functions, you name it. Every silo gets their own KPIs, fights for their own KPIs. There are very few people looking at the bigger picture, and the more radical ideas usually cut across silos, by default having no chance of survival. We hear a lot of arguments around what we call loss aversion. This is a very powerful force. We humans are more focused on protecting what we have than embracing the new thing. And theory dictates that the new thing has to be worth at least twice as much as the old thing before we're willing to consider it. And when we talk about innovation, it's often apples and pears. It's difficult to combine them, making adoption even more difficult. We also hear arguments of loss of control. It's also loss aversion. Or new products cannibalizing on existing cash cows, making it not a very good idea. We have a strong force in terms of legacy systems slowing things down. Oh no, our IT system can't deal with that, our data is incompatible, our CRM system can't work with this, or this is not how we do things internally. This is not how we work, and mind you, procurement has a very strong voice in that. And the third factor is very intangible. It's what we call the human factors. We just heard about it. This is about the technology adoption. If we look at technology adoption, you make it very black and white. You have the technology optimists. They see the opportunity, they see the possibilities, they see the positives. And you have the technology pessimists, mainly focusing on the negatives and the risk. And the two don't really speak the same language. Now, I'm one of those technology optimists. I love technology. I love diving in and understanding what that technology can bring us. But when I experienced resistance myself for the very first time, my interest was triggered in the more psychological aspects of it. And if you want to make change happen in your organization, understanding the psychology behind resistance to change is very important. So I want to share some information here to help you better understand. Let me give you a little bit of context in terms of my personal experience. I have multiple roles in my professional life, but I'm also just a mom of two boys. Ramsey and Jordan, here they're 7 and 8. And Jordan is this boy with this exceptional talent for anything digital. As a baby, he became physically wild when he saw my iPhone. At the age of 2, he knew how to switch Wi-Fi networks if his internet connection was slow. And at the age of 3, he knew what he wanted to become, a YouTube star. Now, if you have kids yourself, you might recognize the situation. You're first going to take your picture with mommy, and then you'll get an ice cream. But in any other situation, it looked like this. I was like a mobile electronics store carrying iPads, game consoles, headsets, extra batteries, you name it, and I brought it. And even though I facilitated this as a mom, I was also deeply worried at the same time. I also read the newspapers telling me the entire generation will soon need glasses. I also wonder if some of the games are maybe too violent and what that does to his brain. And how about the development of his social skills? Does he have enough friends? So as a mom, I want to put the brake on, forcing him to play outside, as I did as a little kid, in this case in Zandvoort at the beach. But I also have another role in life as I'm here today. I speak about technology and the impact. I'm a professor at the Delft University of Technology looking at the new possibilities of technology. I help organizations to speed up innovation. And looking at Jordan as an innovation professional, I think, put the brake on. No, let's speed it up. That boy has a talent, and I need to facilitate that, and I need to help him to develop into whoever he wants to become. And this put me in a very interesting position. And as an innovation professional, I observed my own feelings as a mom with interest, wondering, what am I really afraid of? And this triggered an extensive research into technology adoption and resistance, and why we as humans tend to especially point out why technology is bad for us. And I found out that we use the same arguments over and over again to explain why technology is bad for us. So let's take a journey through history, starting all the way back at the invention of writing, the technology of the moment. And the Greek philosophers argued that writing would be really bad for our brains, because if you would write everything down, you don't have to remember things. It would put a forgetfulness in people's minds, and it would make our knowledge less deep, more superficial. Fast forward to the 16th century, information overload. It wasn't about the internet, it was about a printing press. There would be way too many books. Our brains would not be able to deal with it. The upper classes would lose control over which information was spread through society, and it would make our knowledge more superficial because everybody could go back to the book instead of knowing the stuff so well you can explain it to somebody else. Books became a success. At some point in time, newspapers arrived. And they would put people in social isolation because news was a social process. People came physically together in the news pit to hear about the news and discuss it amongst each other. But with a newspaper, people would be by themselves in their homes reading about the news. Bad for the development of your social skills, bad for integration in society. When reading and writing had become essential to function in society, we saw schools pop up. And parents violently opposed it, because it would be too much stress on the brains of the children. Today we would call it a burnout. But it would also be really, really bad for their health to lock them up in classrooms all day. The phone, at the time wired, would be an invasion of our privacy. The TV generation would never learn how to read or write. And when the internet arrived, we saw the most bizarre headlines. The internet was supposed to be bad for everything. Now, there was one technology pessimist called Mr. Carr. He wrote books about how bad the internet would be for us. And one of his articles went viral saying, "Is Google making us stupid?" Arguing that if we can find anything on Google, we don't have to learn and we don't have to remember. And it would make our knowledge very superficial, also because we would jump from article to article to article without any interest in reading longer pieces. Now, the interesting thing is that some of the arguments might be true, but why is it that as a society or as people we tend to put the spotlight on the possible negative effects of technology and not on that same technology's benefits? There are a couple of underlying reasons. I'll share one today that's very powerful, and it has to do with our frame of reference. And we'll take Lego as an example. If you ask people my age who enjoyed playing with Lego as a child, what would you rather see? That your children or nieces or nephews play with Lego for an afternoon or play with Minecraft on an iPad for an afternoon? Most people choose Lego. Why? Because we tend to choose what we understand and value and what we know today. Most people don't really know what Minecraft is. Essentially, it's a digital Lego. You can mine all sorts of materials and then build, craft any object you like. And this is one of Jordan's many creations who plays Minecraft hours and hours and who never ever touched Lego. And if you make a rational comparison, Minecraft comes out really well. Nevertheless, people stick to their preference for Lego because we tend to choose what we like, understand, and have good memories of, and what we're used to. And if you didn't grow up with digital games, you're often prejudiced. It's bad for your eyes, it's bad for your brain, and worst of all, you can get addicted, and that will put you in social isolation. Now, Stephen Johnson came up with a brilliant thought experiment saying, what if books were invented after video games? So try to imagine for a moment, there are no books, you do not read, no books, no newspapers, nothing. But you do play video games on your smartphone every day, and it's the normal thing to do because everybody around you does it. And books are invented, and kids love them, and they start reading like crazy. What would we say? Chances are we would say, yeah, that's bad for your brain, because a game is a rich multimedia experience triggering all parts of your brain, and a book are simply words on a page. It's bad for creativity and personal development, because in a game you learn how to explore and you learn about leadership, and in a book there's no other option of following the plot. And last but not least, it will put you in social isolation, because a game you play with others, no matter where they are, but with a book, a kid would be by themselves in their room for hours and hours in their own bubble. And this perfectly explains how your frame of reference completely defines what you see. And unfortunately for many of us, there seems to be a relationship with age. And Douglas Adams summarized this in a very interesting way, saying, well, everything that was there when you were born, nothing new. That's how the world works. Anything invented between 15 and 35 is new and exciting, and you can probably get a career out of it. Anything invented after 35 is against the natural order of things. And, you know, it's not that black and white, but there is a logic to it. If I look at electric cars, I get very enthusiastic. I think it's a beautiful piece of technology. My kids shrug their shoulders and go like, yeah, some cars have a power plug and others don't, because that's what their world looks like. So what happens, our frame of reference shapes our attitude towards new technologies. And our frame of reference is built by experiences in the past. And what do designers do in reality to make things more easy to understand, to more easy to embrace? They try to link to that old world, that old frame of reference. The first car actually looked like a carriage without a horse. And it took a really long time for this Mercedes to evolve into this Mercedes, the archetype car as we know it today. Now, this is a car we trust, nothing special. Then the electric cars arrived. You could shape it in such a way that you stress that it's different and innovative. But what did Tesla do when they launched their Model S? They made it look like this. The thing has a grille, even though it doesn't need air to cool the electric motor. But because it has a grille, it has a face, and it feels like a normal car. And we tend to forget about all the new technologies inside. And only when the larger public embraced technology as a brand, they tweaked their designs, and in their latest model, the grille has completely vanished. I think they thought this through very well, how to speed up adoption, how to make it easy for people. And remind you, they made a change in a market that was very traditional. In 2011, everybody still thought that electric cars were a no-go. And just 8 years later, we've all embraced it as the only possible future, and every manufacturer is being compared to Tesla, who's way ahead of the pack. And we see this over and over again. It's not the market leaders that make radical change happen, it's new entrants. I call them game changers. And essentially, they're tech companies that happen to be in automotive, construction, finance, you name it. And they're new organizations with a different frame of reference that are not hindered by organizational silos because they're small and flexible. They have no legacy systems because they can build their IT up from the ground, and they have very little human resistance because making change happen is part of their purpose. They want to make change happen, and they attract employees that want to contribute to that. And that's what makes startups and scale-ups in their DNA a very different type of organization. Now, I do realize that most of you are not do not have the opportunity to actually work at one of those game changers. You work at a more traditional organization. Does that mean that your future is very dark? No, not necessarily. Not if you innovate in the right way and make change happen, but you have to make an effort. And I think one of the companies who did quite well, if we stay in the car space, is Volvo. Some of you might have heard something in the first keynote already. So Volvo was a traditional car company, only very innovative on safety. That's it. They did a brand research. They found out that potential customers didn't really see them on the same level as Daimler or BMW, even though they thought they were. So they needed an edge. They needed to reposition themselves. And the CEO at the time chose sustainability. So the first thing he did was said, we're going to sort of phase out diesel. Huge resistance because it was one of their cash cows, right? But he was persistent and he kept on repeating it, and they phased out diesel. At the same time, they saw what Tesla was doing. And that's when they realized, well, if the future is going to be electric, we'd better embrace it. We are going to be the first major car brand migrating their entire portfolio to electric. And mind you, this is a huge shift for a traditional organization. In 2019, all new models moving forward had to have an electric motor, meaning mostly hybrid. 2025, 50% hybrid, 50% full electric. 2030, 100% electric. So how did they do this? Well, they deployed 3 different innovation strategies in parallel. The first one is working with startups. You have to realize that it's almost impossible to change from the inside out and become a very innovative company quickly. You have to harness the innovation power from companies in the outside. So what did they do? They started a startup accelerator together with 6 other corporates in Gothenburg in Sweden. And startups could go through a 3-month process, making sure that Volvo was on top of what was happening and being able to cherry pick which startups they would like to work with, become a launching customer, or even acquire. They also work with startups in a different way, which is also something we see more and more companies do, is starting their own investment fund. The tech fund, the Volvo Tech Fund. One of their big investments was made in StoreDot last year, doing super fast charging, so allowing you to get 160 kilometers in only 5 minutes. Very important, as a major brand, you want to move to electrified car portfolio. Besides working with startups, they also needed to change from the inside out, and that's what the morning presentation also referred to. So we often call this sort of the agile transformation, digital transformation, whatever you want to call it. But it is all about reinventing yourself, and that is a major endeavor. Volvo invested over 150,000 man-hours in pure training on agile working. It's a huge investment. But it did work out for them. So in 2020, they launched their first full electric car, the XC40. Mind you, 8 years after the Model S. They were late to the party, but it was a good start. A year later, their second electric model. But they also realized that the more radical innovation just doesn't have a chance of survival within the traditional corporate. So what do? For the more radical innovation, they build new companies. They did that with Lynk & Co, which is basically a business model innovation, not selling cars, but giving out subscriptions that customers can cancel every month, allowing people also to share their cars with the Lynk & Co community, recuperating some of their monthly costs. They also did it with Polestar. New brands, autonomous teams outside of the organization, but technically they use the same technical platform as the other cars. So this also means that their supply chains are intertwined, right? Even though it is a separate car, a separate company, it's not completely separate in the back end. Now, these 3 innovation strategies can totally work in parallel because they deliver different results. The first one, working with startups, usually gives you new product features, like algorithms for self-driving cars or better windscreens with like that increased contrast in bad weather. Reinventing yourself usually leads to new products in terms of moving your entire product portfolio onto a future-proof platform. And the third one delivers new value propositions for new markets or new target audiences. And in all 3, unfortunately, what I see a lot, procurement is a limiting factor. You need to figure out, if you want to work with startups, your normal list of criteria probably doesn't comply. And same for building that new company. They want to move fast. Pace is much, much higher than the traditional corporate. So I think you also have a huge challenge ahead, or a big strategic question in terms of what will you do to facilitate innovation in your organization? Because without procurement on board, it will become very, very difficult. Thank you very much.